First popularized in American baseball, Moneyball is the sporting concept behind helping teams with lower budgets compete with those at the top through shrewd spending and finding undervalued talents. The idea was to ignore the traditional scouting methods and focus mainly on statistics and numbers to find those players that were worth way more than what their current market value suggested, whether that be young players that were yet to be identified or older players coming towards the end of their contract. This has since been deployed in football too, the likes of Brentford and Brighton as some great examples of teams using Moneyball, allowing them to compete with a small budget against clubs with budgets far larger than them. But of course we're an FM channel, so why are we talking about it? Well, you can actually use statistics in the game of Football Manager to identify talents that other clubs might not, and that might help your team with a lower budget compete with those at the very top. And your aim will be to find some similar results to what these clubs have in real life, like Brighton did with Moises Caicedo, who signed a relatively unknown player from Ecuador for 5 million, only to flip it after a couple of seasons to a 100 million sale. Or you might find a player like Brian Mbeumo, as Brentford did, a guy that had scored 10 goals in the second tier of France. Many people wouldn't have heard of him, but Brentford saw what was there, saw the talent, and have now made him one of the Prem's best. So today I'll be showing you how you can find similar players in Football Manager, those guys that are undervalued that you can sign for a small budget using statistics, and then hopefully flip them into massive sales. Now I should point out there are mods and skins available for Football Manager that will remove the normal attributes entirely and have you only focus on statistics, and as cool as they are, I'm not going to be doing that today. I'm going to be showing you how on the normal base Football Manager game you can join together the knowledge you'll already have with knowledge about some statistics to hopefully find you a few more gems in your saves. But without further ado, if you do go on to enjoy the video, make sure you smash the like button for us and subscribe for more on the road to 200k subs. We're very close at the time of recording. Hopefully with this video we can get over the mark. So thank you guys, and let me know if you've had any success with Moneyball or you have any questions about what you see today. Now I'm in the second season of a Celtic rebuild that I was doing for my own channel, which, subtle plug, is found in the description if you want to check it out, but we're going to be using this as our example save today to try and find a few cool players that we might be able to pick up to help our team. And what we're going to do is not just show you how to do it, but I'll also be showing you a few examples of some filters that you might use to sign a striker, a winger, and then also a midfielder. Obviously there's other positions on the pitch, but hopefully by seeing what I'm doing you'll get an idea of how to do it in your save. Now the reason statistics can be useful in FM is that while attributes are a great representation of a player, there's some things you can't see, like hidden attributes under the hood that affect actually how well a player plays, and there's also just some meta things, I guess you can call it, in FM that you wouldn't necessarily know just by looking at a player. Like Dazen Maeda here of Celtic, whose name I've probably butchered, has 12 for finishing. Other than that, is not technically gifted at all, but he is rapid, and in Football Manager that pace seems to help a lot because he absolutely destroys it for us in this Celtic team. So these are the kind of things that you wouldn't necessarily pick up on just looking at a player's attributes, and the same way a coach report is a person's judgment of how good a player is based on multiple different things, from how well he fits into your system to how good he actually is on the pitch, and of course it classes his weaknesses too. But these of course are opinions, but one thing that doesn't lie is statistics. So if you can combine the coach reports, the attributes and statistics too, you'll hopefully be able to find some great gems in your save and get the best out of your players. But let's use Moneyball now to try and find a few examples of players we could sign in this save. Now a few disclaimers to start: the bigger your database, the more leagues you have loaded, obviously one, the more players that you're going to have, and two, the more statistics you'll be able to use and the more players you'll be able to look through. I'm managing in Scotland here with a pretty small database of only 15,000 players, so all the players in total with a world scouting range is 15,000. Of course if you've got a smaller scouting range, less people will come up when you do these searches. So I'm just on the player search screen. I've turned off any transfer interest for now, and what we're first going to do is use Moneyball to try and look for a striker. Let's say we're after a forward for our team. Normally you'd ask your scouts to go out and find a striker, and you can do that, but this is just an extra fun way that you can do to try and find some really undervalued talent. So what I'm going to do is start with the basics. We're going to look for a forward, so I'm going to do exactly that. I'm going to click on this striker position here, and then if you want to lower the age and find a young player or an older player you can, but we're we're going to leave it open because with Moneyball, it's not just about young players, it's about players of any ages that are undervalued compared to what their output might be. Now I'm going to give you guys 2 tips that apply to any position, not just striker. Of course, with striker selected here, we now have 2,500 strikers to look through, from Kylian Mbappe to players in the Indian Super League and over in Norway. So there's lots of players here to choose from, of course, but we want to narrow this down. The first thing I suggest you do is go down to this add condition button here, go down to general, and then you want to try and find world reputation, and then you want to tweak this to your club. So you can see already in the corner here, we've gone down from 2,500 players to 559 with a world reputation of good. This is going to bring through players that are playing in decent divisions. You can see it's mainly Premier League clubs here, but it's not just those. It will go all the way down to teams over in Brazil, in the MLS, in Turkey, in lower leagues of Portugal, but it's not bringing forward those guys that, amateur level. But of course, if you wanted to lower this, if you're not Celtic, if you're a team in, I don't know, the Vanarama National League of England, you might want to lower this down a bit more, bring through a slightly lesser caliber of player. Even with just a world reputation of okay, we've cut out about 1,000 players from our list, which is going to make our search a bit easier. The other thing that I suggest you always do with any player in any position is look for those guys that have got appearances. If you really are basing things on statistics, go to stats, to general, into this general stat, and then instead of appearances, go for starting appearances. And then I like to select someone that's had at least 10 starts, because that can kind of give you an idea a bit more when it comes to these stats. Because what you might get instead is a player that's came off a bench against, a team with 9 men in a cup match, and he's absolutely demolished his expected goals because it's an easy game for him and he's scoring loads. It kind of rules out those players because we're looking at those guys that are regularly starting for their clubs. But now, of course, we want to narrow down this list to find those players that are going to be the best performers. So we're looking for those guys with low value that also overperform with the chances they're given. The ones, if you put the ball in front of them, they'll likely score a goal. Now, for any stat that you want to look for, the best thing you want to do is go to this condition section and then go to stats chalkboard, and you can see everything from someone who wins a lot of headers to, I don't know, someone that makes a lot of crosses, passing, key passes made. When it comes to goal scoring though, if you go to the stats general section, you can see the more common ones like expected assists, expected goals per 90, expected assists per 90, but the one I'm going to look for is expected goals over performance. Those guys that with the chances given have really overperformed, and therefore they're the kind of players we want to find, the ones that are going to give us the best output from the chances we give. So we're looking for players currently with an expected goal over performance of 10, and you can already see that's bringing through some of the best players in the world like Kylian Mbappe, like Mitrovic, Gerard Moreno, whatever it might be. These are players that really we're not going to be able to sign here at Celtic, and we can narrow this down a little bit later, but 10 is a lot to overperform your XG by, so let's lower this down a little bit using this slider to, let's say, 5. That's brought through now 156 players. Of course, some of them are Kylian Mbappe's and Ansu Fati's, but don't worry, we're going to narrow this down a little bit more by using this interested in button here, and that's only going to bring through the players, if we set it to doubtful, that at least have some interest in joining our club. Now we've got everyone from John Duran to Brian Mbuemo to Beto to Daniel Marlon. All of these guys fit the criteria currently of being a striker that has overperformed their expected goals, which is great. But who's overperformed their expected goals more? Well, we can narrow this down pretty easily. All I'm going to do is head to this button here, which allows us to customize the view that we're looking at, and I'm going to look for the stat in question. Now you can do this with anything. If you're looking for aerial challenges attempted per 90, you can move this across to the right and you can filter players based on that. You can also save these filters for later for any save. So if you're looking for a big striker, you might put aerial battles won or whatever it might be, headers scored, anything like that. You can bring it over onto this right hand side and then you can save that filter for the future. But for us, we are looking for the statistic that we looked at earlier, which was overperformance of expected goals. So after a lot of scrolling, I've found expected goals over performance here, and we can now add it to the right side. You can then move it up and down so it appears higher in your list should you want to when you're looking at someone. So I've put expected goals over performance over our knowledge of a player, and now if I do that, you can see expected goals over performance is on that right hand side and we can use it. Now as mentioned, you can save this view for the future should you want to in this section here, but now we're looking at all these players, we can filter it based on who's overperforming their expected goals. So if we click that, it's going to make certain players rise to the top. And this is where you have to use a bit of your brain power as well, because we can see some of these players are overperforming their XG by 19, 18, 17. That's amazing. But then sometimes you realize it's because of where they are. Someone like Mehdi Taremi is, of course, a well-known player playing in a division that he is far better than, and you're kind of going to look through now and look for those players that might be of interest to you. Let's say you did want to sign a young striker. We could narrow this down to, let's say, I don't know, 26. Let's do that. And now we're down to 38 players. Everything from John Duran out in Saudi Arabia to a guy that's playing in a lower division of Portugal who could also potentially be a good player. Now, what we should note when looking at this is just because one player has more expected goals over performance than another, it doesn't mean he's necessarily a better player, but it does give you an idea of what he's currently working with. Of course, circumstances play a role, everything from Noel Lopez playing in a reserve league here for Real Madrid's B team. That's obviously going to mean that the level's a little bit lower for him, or you've also got players that might be playing in a system where they're primarily a poacher and they're only tapping balls in from a couple yards out, that kind of thing, whereas there might be a better striker that his manager is making him shoot from outside the box every time, therefore making it unlikely that he's going to be one that's scoring a lot of goals. So you have to kind of bear all this in mind, but when we're looking at it on a base level, we're getting a good idea already of that sometimes you can't trust the coach reports, because someone like Jason Van Duiven over for Lommel over in the Belgian leagues, I think they are, yes they are, he's doing really well, but our scouts don't recommend him very highly. Now, is it just because he's doing well for his level and that wouldn't translate to us? Maybe, but what we're looking for here is undervalued talent. So you don't have to go out and buy John Duran, who's 70 million and the best that our scouts could find. Instead, if we had a budget of, say, 10 million, we could now narrow this down. We could go to transfer value and we could sort for those players that are under 10 million. That then leaves 22 options. Now, the obvious one that's came up for me that I'll be looking at personally is Firmino. Now, I know he is a great striker in FM, but if you didn't, suddenly you'd find a guy that our scouts weren't looking for because he's in the second tier of Spain that's available for £5 million or so, way cheaper than John Duran, and he's overperforming his expected goals massively. So now you could go out, put a scout report on him, see how he's been doing. I mean, he scored 30 goals for Burgos last season, 29 this year. This is clearly a great goal scorer in Football Manager, and I'm sure that would translate very well to Celtic. So there you go. We've instantly found a player for 5 million, but again, that's someone that I have personally heard of. But this guy, he's not. I mean, Konstantin Tiokarvin, how much is he going to be? If we have a look and ask the assistant, we can see he's going to be about 5 million quid, a similar price. Again, you could now scout him and see if he looks any good based on his attributes too, and suddenly you might be onto a winner for a player that you might not have found before that could come into your team. But obviously these guys are playing at a pretty high level still. Someone that isn't though is Charles Ondo of Ebbsfleet United. Now, I'm not saying we're going to sign him for Celtic, of course not, but if you're a lower level team, you might have just found yourself a very good option for a bargain price. I mean, he's overperformed his XG by 9, which is obviously a great result. We can see there's another guy here playing for Como in Serie B who's managed to overperform his by 9 as well. And if you were looking for a real bargain, the cheapest one we've been able to find is Francisco Mwepu, who's a 26-year-old Zambian forward, available for about 20k. He's an international who apparently has been overperforming his XG to a decent level, and he scored 20 in 32 for Cadiz's B team, which of course shows that his level is a little bit lower than some others, but he did score 3 as well in La Liga, so clearly there is a bit of a player there. You could scout him and see what's going on, but certainly, even if he's terrible, he's going to be worth more than that price that we're seeing there. So this is just allowing us to find some extra options for that striker position that otherwise we haven't scouted. I mean, if you have a look at the ones that we have scouted compared to those that we haven't, there's plenty of players here we never would have found, from Firmino to Tjokovic. If we really lower the age, you can see there's some other very good young options here, some of which haven't been given the chance yet. I mean, Mark Gui is currently at the Atletico Madrid B team in this save. He's one. We've got Miles Leburn here as well, who's playing for Charlton, who is overperforming his XG. So these are the kind of players you can look at. And of course, if you're not Celtic, if you want to lower it down a little bit, we can lower the world reputation to say decent, and then you get a few more options up here. Again, there's some playing in League 2, in the Championship here over in Scotland. Kieran Offord is the player here. He might be someone we look at. So naturally, with Celtic, we might not need to do Moneyball. We are a big club, but if you're a team that's working on a shoestring budget, it's a great way to find bargain options, but not just in terms of general players that are doing well, but maybe finding one that suits your tactic down to the ground. For example, let's say you are a player that's playing currently with, I don't know, really focusing on crosses, and you just want a big man in the middle who's going to win headers. That's all you want to focus on, someone to win those balls. I'm not saying you will do that, but let's say you were, you can do that also. So instead of looking at expected goals overperformed, we can instead go to the chalkboard section, go to aerial challenges, just have a bit of a look around. You'll see all the stats that you can use, and we're going to go for, let's say, headers won per 90 for a striker. Currently it's set quite low, but if we go to players that are winning at least 2 headers, already we're down to 200 people. If we go to someone that's winning 4 headers, suddenly we are down now to strikers that are winning a lot of their aerial duels in a game. Again, from here, you can then start narrowing it down to players that are interested in signing for you. We're left with 38. We can also look at expected goals over performance and start taking a look. We've got everything from Thomas Henry at Hellas Verona to Will Goodwin at Swindon Town, Lorenzo Luca, a player that I know is very good with aerial battles in Football Manager. And if we go by value, I mean, you can see there's some real bargain options here that, yes, are playing at quite a low level. So let us raise this slightly from decent to okay. And it will start bringing through. Again, we're just tweaking slowly. And now by using that search and focusing on expected goals overperformed again, we've got everything from players in the Championship to suddenly one that's playing for Hearts available for £1 million. So yeah, let's say we were looking at Josh Madger originally as our scouted player that was someone that's great in the air. He's 14 million, but now we find that there's someone that could do potentially a decent job, or at least to a similar level, for only £1 million or so. Now, if we take a look at him, is he really going to be good enough for Celtic? I don't know, but he's an option as an aerial forward, and he scored 22 at the same level that we're currently playing. So you know what? For £1 million, he might not be a bad pickup. But let's move away slightly now from strikers to show you what you might look for if you're looking for a winger, and you'll start to get the idea of how you can use Moneyball well. So now we're going to select those wing positions, and we've got 923 people to pick from that have at least an okay world reputation and have started at least 10 games. Again, we're going to go down to the chalkboard and a general area and look for stats. I want a creative winger, let's say. I'm going to look for someone that's getting a high amount of expected assists per 90. He might not be getting the assists, he might be playing in a team that's really wasting all of his chances, but he is creating a lot of them. That's what we're looking for today. So let's look for a player that's creating, I don't know, 0.3 expected assists. That's apparently quite high because it's only bought through 5 players. Let's lower it down a little bit to 0.2, and once again we can go into our customized view. We can scroll down again to find expected assists per 90 that we're looking at. We can bring that over to the right as we did earlier with expected goals. I think I've clicked on the wrong one there. Let's quickly remove that and then add expected assists per 90. There we go. We can then move that up a little bit, and suddenly we can focus on that. So again, we're now looking for creative wingers who create a lot of chances, and we're going to try and find value. Now, currently, apparently the best player willing to join us would be Malcolm. Of course, he's creating a lot of chances. He's a brilliant player, but a few down from him, we find a player that's available at Dundalk for 200k. Now, of course, probably not going to be good enough to play at Celtic's level, but it's at least someone we can look at. We've got a few players out in the Japanese divisions. We've got someone here in Sky Bet League 2, someone at Millwall, and again, if we want to, we can go ahead and raise this world reputation slightly to fairly good. You could also add a transfer value cap on it should you want to. We don't want those £10 million players. And we're left with 18 to look at now that we can start to narrow down. Here's one, Javi Antiveros, who's getting 0.26 expected assists per 90 from the wing, who's available from Cadiz for what, £4 million or so. In the right team though, he could be great. What about this guy, Carlos Palacios, playing for Colo Colo? We never would have found him otherwise, but he is creating a lot of expected assists for his teammates. By doing this as well, I've also found this guy, Marcelo Olande, who's available for £1 million playing for Sundowns in the South African division, and you can see he is really smashing it. So this is the kind of player we might want to look at. Just to show you how this can be used again, I'm now looking for someone that's creating a lot of key passes in an attacking midfield or a central midfield spot. You can see I've just selected a position, kept all our filters from before, and we're looking at someone who makes at least 2 key passes per 90. It's a lot to ask for, but all of these players in theory are very creative players. Again, you'll get some players that are just way too good for the teams they're playing in and the competitions they're playing in, but you're going to find some value options for sure. I mean, over here we've got Tom Carroll. Yes, he's 34, but maybe he'd be good value for money at only about 50k. There's Dan Crowley with Swansea in the Championship, available for about 500,000, who's making a lot of key passes, and it would make sense. He's got a very high passing stat, but he might not have came up otherwise on a scout report. I mean, Ross Barkley we know of, but George Byers, would I have came across him otherwise? Maybe not. £500 for Kilmarnock's Kyle Magennis. He's a really good passer in terms of creating chances for his teammates from midfield. And finally, I'm going to show you something that isn't Moneyball, but I like to use every now and then. I think it does a really good job job of weeding out those players that are doing way too good in divisions they should not be in. So if we go back to our settings from before, where we've just got a player under 10 million that has played a lot, I'm going to tweak this slightly by going to stats and then general and then to this section here, and we're going to go for average rating. Now, if you don't know in Football Manager, average rating is like their score on OneFootball or whatever app you use, FOTMob, you know, to see how well a player has played. So if we go to average rating and look for players with an average rating of over 7.5, that's going to bring through those players that are playing way above the level that they currently are. So if we do that, and now we go ahead and we add it to our filter as well. So if we go to customize current view, and then we go to average rating, which should be quite near the top, if alphabetical order is my strong suit, and it is. So if we bring this over to here, it's now on the right hand side. Let's move it up a little bit. Also, to let you know, if you want to get rid of something that we've looked at before, you can easily do it. And once again, you can save these filters. If you want to save one that's called Big Striker or something, you can do exactly that. But now we've got the players with the highest average match ratings, we can filter on it, and we're going to find really good value for money players that are playing in leagues that they're far too good for, but obviously because of the league they're in, they might be available for a cheap fee. I mean, Douglas Santos is killing it over in Zenit, but Fernino has came up again over at Burgos, a player that's doing way too good for the level he's at. He needs to be bought out of that club and bought to a higher level, and you know he's going to hit the ground running. How about Bruno Langa at Almeria, a left wing back that you'd never find otherwise, but over in Spain, he is killing it in their system. I mean, in La Liga 2, he's been one of the best players in that division on a regular basis. We've got a guy here at Aruca, who's available for 2 million quid or so, playing right back. Again, this part isn't quite Moneyball, but it does help weed out those players that are really good value for the leagues they're in. I mean, here's another one. I mean, some people might look at Alberto Moreno as a name or look at the coach report and go, he's 33, I don't want him. But at the end of the day, it's 200k for a left wing back that is currently in La Liga 2, being one of the best players in the division still at his age. So clearly he's still good, and he's available for a really cheap amount. It's just a great way to find players that are doing well in their respective leagues. To show you an example of how this has worked in my own saves, at Brentford, I found this guy, Chernalov, someone that I'd never look at normally, at Hanover for 1.9 million, because he'd been doing pretty well over in the German divisions, particularly in the Bundesliga, at 34 starts, a 7.3 average match rating. We got him on a very low value, and whilst he isn't necessarily the best player in the world, to get 5 goals, 5 assists in 2 seasons in a row for a player for only 2 million quid in the Prem is great business. He's not the only one though. Here's a pretty bang average attacking midfielder, Matthias Seidel, that we picked up for Brentford for 7.5 million, having done very well in the Austrian divisions, and quickly turned that round to Premier League performances and a sale to Al Ittihad for over double our money. It shows you what you can do with Moneyball if you use it right in FM. Now again, there are skins out there that completely remove attributes for you and you can focus on the statistics, but I think it's just a nice little thing to be able to do in your transfer windows to find 1 or 2 gems to help your team. So if it's something that you found useful, smash the like button. Any questions, let me know below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.